For years, the advice was simple: learn the tools, build the skills, and Canada will have a place for you in tech. And I believed that, and I built my career on that. That advice is not wrong exactly, but it is incomplete for where the market actually is right now. Being technically strong is not longer enough on its own to protect you from a layoff, a frozen headcount, or a hiring manager who has to justify every single new hire. Has to talk to their nervous leadership team. And I'm not here to scare you, I'm here to tell you what I'm actually seeing and doing as someone living through this exact moment as an immigrant senior data professional in Canada right now. Let me describe the shift in plain terms because I think a lot of career advice online is still operating like it is 2021. A few years ago, growth was the entire story, which is hire fast, build fast, worry about efficiency later. So, Toronto and Vancouver tech hubs were expanding headcounts aggressively, and if you had the skills, there was a role somewhere. That environment is gone, and what has replaced it is extreme caution because higher the interest rates made the capital more expensive. Leadership teams are being asked to justify every dollar, every headcount, and every tool subscription. And hiring has not stopped, but it is become more deliberate in a way it was not before. The networking advice that used to work, which is reaching out, building relationship, opportunities will follow, which all still matters a lot, but it is slower now and it does not overcome a genuinely frozen budget. And I have felt that slowness myself, and I know many of you have too. I want to name something that I have thought a lot about in terms of senior professional feel, but they rarely say out loud. For most of my career, being good at technical work was the whole game, such as learning the tool, mastering the skill, delivering the results, and eventually the security followed from the competence. That was the deal, and for a long time it held. And right now, the deal has kind of feels broken. You can genuinely be excellent at what you do and still watch your role disappear because of a decision made three levels above you about a budget line you never even knew existed. And this is disorienting in a way that it is hard to describe if you have not lived it through. And I'm not saying this to be bleak. I'm saying it because naming it honestly is the first step to actually adjusting to it instead of quietly blaming yourself for something that was never really about your competence in the first place. So, here is the actual shift I have made in how I think about my own work and what I'm watching other senior data professionals also do successfully right now. For most of my career, a lot of the value I deliver was in reporting. Here is that answers like what is happening, here is the trend, here is the dashboard, and that is all still useful, that is all still being worked upon. But in a cost conscious environment, the work that gets projected, gets funded, is the work that ties directly to the saving or preserving money and not just describing what already happened. So practically that means asking a different question before you start a project, and not just what does the data shows, but what decision that this change and what does that decision save and cost the business. For example, a churn analysis is more valuable framed as this identifies a 200k dollar in preventable revenue loss than framed as here is a churn rate this quarter. It's the same work but completely different weight in the room. This is not about manipulating the truth, it is about being honest about the actual business value of what you build instead of assuming the value in self evident just because the analysis is technically correct. This same shift needs to show up in how you present yourself, not just how you do the work day by day. If your resume or your portfolio lead with technical stacks such as SQL, Python, DBT, Snowflake, you're answering a question hiring managers are not actually asking right now. They know you can all use the tool, they know you are all technically savvy. What they actually need is to know what happened because you use those tools. So, for example, they wanted to know, did a process get faster, did a cost get lower, or did a decision get made with more confidence? When I rebuilt my own portfolio project during my last job search, I did not lead with the architecture. I led with the specific business problem it solved and what that problem mattered enough for me to build something for it to be unprompted. So that framing is what got two separate interviews to ask me to walk through them in a more detail. And I made a whole video about that story if you want to know more about it. But the underlining thing is the tech stack still matters, it just goes second, not first. Now, I want to talk about something specific to those of us who came to Canada as an internationally trained professional, because I think there is a real honest case to be made here, not a feel good platitude. Many of us have already lived through economic uncertainty because before we even set foot in Canada. Currency instability, unpredictable job market, systems that did not always work the way they were supposed to. And that is not a disadvantage in a moment like this. It is direct lived experience in operating without guarantees, which is exactly the environment most companies are in right now. And I'm not saying that that makes the job search easier. It just genuinely does not. The Canadian experience barrier is still real, and I have talked about that honestly in another video. But in conversations where I have been asked to speak directly about navigating real uncertainties before, it has landed differently than a pure technical answer would have. And that perspective is worth naming and using deliberately and not hiding. One concrete thing I have made, and this came directly from watching what other people do in conversation when you talk with your stressed business stakeholder, and I lead with on outcome first, then I detail, not the other way around. If someone asks me about a project now, my first sentence is basically a business result. Then only if they want to know more, I go into a technically more detailed approach. A year or two ago, I probably would have started with an interesting technical challenge because that is what excites me about the work. But that is a mistake right now. Nobody is stressed about the technical aspect. People are more of concerned on their own budget, or if they do have the budget to the bandwidth to sit through the technical build-up before they really mattered. So, this is the small shift in how you talk, but it changes how competent and how relevant you sound in the first 30 seconds of any conversation. So, if you are searching right now and it feels harder than it should, given how strong your skills are, I want you to hear this clearly. It's not just you, and it's not a reflection of your competence. The market genuinely shifted underneath all of us, and what you can control is how you frame your value. Lead with impact, not tools. Be honest about the uncertainty you have already navigated in your life, because it is a real asset, not a footnote. And give yourself permission to feel disoriented by a shift that nobody fully prepared any of us for. If any of this matched what you're feeling right now, I hope it helped even a little to hear it named honestly. Subscribe if you want more real talk about navigating a data career in Canada. I post every Wednesday, and drop a comment telling me what you are seeing in your own job search right now. I read every single one. See you on Wednesday.